Welcome everyone to our final session of the CLP courses. It has been a great run, I guess. This is session number 10 for me to participate with you guys. For those of you who were here last month, I was not here. I was in Romania on a missions trip. So Scott, my counterpart, presented that. Thank you so much for treating him well and kindly. And he was nervous, but you guys were awesome to him. And hopefully that you found the table discussions and the wine and cheese helpful. So yeah, sorry I couldn't be there. But yeah, so like I said, this is the last session of our CLP courses. I'd just like to thank the Carrie for allowing me to come and do this. Thank the board, the Waterloo board, for kind of have a vision for this, and then I can kind of fulfill this education side. It's been a lot of fun. Learned lots myself, and I thought this was a great idea as well to just do this quick review. So yeah, so Carrie, we'll get to the next slide. Obviously tonight, for those of you who are, this is a recording for you, kind of our first snowfall of the 2024-2025 season. So we're happy that everyone's out working or online. But yeah, we just wish everyone a great snow event, and glad to see it actually snowing again. So obviously kind of we were supposed to do this in person, so sit with someone new. Obviously it's not going to happen tonight, so we'll just move to the next slide. So for those of you who are new to the program, my name is Grant Harrison. I'm from Nexter Consulting, and have the pleasure of, like I said, doing this presentation with you. If you don't know who I am, I've been in the landscape industry for 30 plus years, and kind of started on a shovel, ended up working for a bunch of different contractors, own my own construction business, and now we run Nexter Consulting, where we love to help contractors like yourselves kind of build a better business. And of course, we love giving back, and this part of the giving back is be able to teach these events through Landscape Ontario. So yeah, so tonight's topic, the learning objectives, kind of the same format we've always used. So for each one of these, we're just going to do high level topics. I went through the slide presentations for each one of these and thought, what was either the most talked about topic that we did, or maybe the one I think that should be a good reminder. So again, we talked about the first one, we did navigating HR, the strategic planning one, marketing sales management, the corporate finance management one, the leadership and corporate citizenship, and then the funnest of them all was the risk law and contract one, which we actually had to end up re-recording. The in-person one was really good, but we ended up re-recording that. So that's kind of what we're going to go through tonight. And again, please, if you have questions, put it in the box behind us. So yeah, so let's get going. So again, so if you're live, if you want to answer this is great. But from last month when Scott was leading the wine and cheese one, kind of this one, we forgot to update this one, but kind of what did you learn from last month? Again, it's always a good reminder to go back and see and pretty much say like, hey, last month we talked about this. Have we done that? Have we actually implemented it? And then have you put more resources to it? So again, just go back to those roundtables, and maybe you took some notes, go back and see that. But let's get started on the next one. So navigating HR. So again, the learning objectives of this course, or the book, was how to develop and implement effective recruitment and hiring practices, how to make company HR policies, how to do education and training programs, how to do a better how to build a program for retaining your employees, how to do safety programs. Talks a lot about job descriptions. And then the one thing that I think that most of us don't like to do or shy away from was how to manage employee discipline and termination. Next. So in that, there was some good practical stuff there. So in that, effective recruitment and hiring practices, it says always be hiring. I think we've heard about this over and over again. But especially as the tide turns right now, and I do see a tide out there currently where there's definitely more jobs available. There's more people available than there's jobs right now. So you might be having people that maybe have worked for you in the past come back to you, maybe someone who left you, is maybe they went and started their own business and they're like, hey, this is not as easy as I thought it was. Maybe someone like an A player walks into your door and you're like, hey, this is an awesome person. So you need to be hiring those people back or get them. You need to make a place for them. Most of the contractors we talk to right now are like, hey, we're 95% full. Even if you're 100% full, if the right person comes to the door, you do need to hire them and get there. The second one it talks about, and we see this all the time, is you have to be creative with your job postings. Indeed does a great job in taking our money and not teaching us how to do creative job postings. But you do need to do a better job in creative writing. And there's all kinds of tools you can do that. There's artificial intelligence, chat GTP. Just don't cut and paste from someone else's book. Just be creative with it and really just give some sort of vision in that job post of what it is like to work there. So you do need a referral program. Again, like when I think when we did this program, whatever, like almost a year ago now, the market had changed and referral programs were really, really important because we couldn't get enough employees. But my suggestion is to do not stop doing this program. You still want great people to walk in your door, and those great people are going to walk in through the current great people you have. So offering some sort of great referral program, something for both parties, something that the person who's referred, but also the person that's doing the referring. So we've seen up to $250 per person that you can give. So $500 for a great program that you can have great people come in and to your program. So cheaper, $500 is cheaper than Indeed. Searching for that person, if they are the right person, is going to make that money back. So that's always a good program. So don't forget to do that. Leverage technology. Again, when so many people were posting ads, you were getting maybe 100, maybe 200 people were applying for the job. Majority of the people were not people that are actually applying for the job, whether it was spam or just someone doing their due diligence in order to get unemployment. But leveraging technology so that someone can actually apply to your position in your job without actually talking to anyone. So I have two sons, they're both 25 plus. And if they're going to look for a job, they're going to do it on their phone and they're probably going to do it 10 o'clock at night. So having something there where there's technology in the background to be like, apply for this job, tell us a little bit about yourselves. And then even to the point where it'll start to thin them out. And then if it is the right candidate, they can actually book an appointment with you without you actually talking to you until the very end. So too many of us are spending way too much time chasing people, calling people back that aren't even legitimate leads for staffing. So implement some sort of technology. Leverage Landscape Ontario programs. Again, they have the new Grow program. They have tons of resources for us. They have a bulletin board that's coming up at Congress soon in January. Landscape Ontario puts so much resources into this HR to help you out that if you don't use it, it's a shame because it's a great program. And I talk to people from Landscape Ontario and they're frustrated by how little contractors actually use these programs. So they've built it for you and it's there for you and it's there to help you hire, to help you train. So you need to take advantage of those programs that are there. Tons of government programs, incentives for that. We talked a couple about them. The summer student grant. I think it's closing soon. I think it closes maybe the middle of December. Maybe I think. Don't quote me on that. But there's tons of incentive program out there. The Grow program is one of those incentives where the government is putting money at trying to place people in your business. So be able to take opportunity to do that. It is free money. It comes a lot of training along with it. So if you can get an employee that maybe has half their training, your basic training, that's even better. So look out there. Again, talk to Landscape Ontario, talk to people around you. There's lots of HR professionals within the industry that can help you with that. And don't take advantage of that type of stuff. Even though you might not think you need it, it's still better to have it. So the last one we talked about, and I'm a big component of this, is using personality profiles. If you have, to me, I think this is a mandatory thing to do. If you're looking for like a crew leader and above, middle managers, leverage some sort of personality profile, whether it's DISC or there's all kinds, there's hundreds of them that you can take that are reasonable. There's predictive index. We love predictive index. It's more expensive, but it really helps you understand the person that you're hiring. And how they're typically a good personality profile is going to help you with how that person is going to interact within that job, how you can coach them, how you can talk to them, and just going to give you a kind of heads up as far as what the person is. But especially on the hiring side, it's going to tell you if this person is the right fit or not. I've made this mistake too many times. I fall in love with a candidate maybe too early on, and I don't see some of the yellow flags. So these personality profiles don't allow you to see those flags, and you don't fall in love with the candidate. So some good recruitment practices there. Next slide. Retention programs, again, the best companies that are out there as far as profitability goes are the staff that they retain. Okay. You cannot have a constant turnover of staff. Keep your quality of work up, keep your customer experience up, keep repairs and maintenance down on equipment if you cannot retain your staff. Okay. As our industry, we are awful at retaining our staff. People will be like, oh, I need to hire more and more people. And the first question I always ask is, how many staff are you retaining? So to me, you need to retain 80% of your staff season over season. If you're not doing that, you're going to have a problem. It's going to affect your profitability. It's going to affect, if you're an owner operator, it's going to affect your stress level. You cannot afford to keep hiring if you have a bad employee retention program. So in that, knowing that, some tools that the book talks about is training passports. Just basically, if you kind of picture your like CLP program, we used to have those little books that used to get stamps in for passing CLP courses, something like that is just basically for a job. So one of our contractors created one that was for they were woodworking, so they built decks, fences, all that type of stuff, and each passport was for a tool. So if you figured out how to use the chop saw, you got a little stamp. If you figured out how to use the auger, you got a stamp. If you got to figure out how to use the air nailer, you got a stamp, right? And then someone, if their direct report would sign off on that. And then eventually, if you got enough sections of that, you would actually get a pay raise. So create some sort of system that is driven by the employee that has some sort of compensation based on it. That way, you're going to know who your A players are, who the people that really want to be there, and that's going to weed out the people that just don't want to be there, right? If you don't want to be there, you're not going to take the extra effort to carry that passport around or ask your direct report to help you or sign off on that type of stuff. So it offers you a couple different things in those training passports. So that's really good. If you're here tonight, or maybe your employer has sent you here tonight, that's part of the professional development program. Again, Landscape Ontario does an amazing job with the professional development programs right now. We're into the winter of 2024, and the professional development programs, the courses that are at Landscape Ontario are so numerous, so inexpensive, and are so much easier to access, just like this course is. This is exactly what we're offering. We're trying to give you, as an owner, your employees, education that's inexpensive and that can help you with that. So you can do stuff like how to lead better. You can get sales training. You can get practical training. Anything you think of, Landscape Ontario is trying to do for you, and trying to give you the resources you need to do this with your staff. No other industry that I know of has these type of resources. My brother-in-law is a carpenter. He belongs to the Carpenters Union. He has none of these resources. The union doesn't do this for them. And if they do it, it's hugely expensive to take these courses. So please take advantage of it this coming winter. Go to the professional development site in Landscape Ontario and sign up. Sign yourself up, sign your staff up. The people that are hosting these or facilitating these are there to give back. We don't make money on this. We're here to give back. We are excited as a facilitator, as a teacher, to see you or your staff members in those class, and we're passionate about helping that out. So take part of that. The last one it talks about in here is vesting your people is the best retention program you can. So again, if maybe, spending the time with someone to create a passport, that's investing. Again, when I got hired in this industry, it was just like, bring your lunch and jump in the truck and go, right? Didn't even have to have work boots, could take my shirt off all day long. where now it's like it's expected. It's expected new hires for to invest. If you have a good onboarding program, take the time to create a good onboarding program. That's not just an hour or two, but maybe takes 30 days. That's maybe an hour or to a week that someone can walk through it and learn your business. So again, there's a direct correlation between the money you invest in the person is going to reflect on how long they stay within the organization. So next slide, Carrie. The other thing it talks about in here that I think is really good is we typically, for the safety side of our business, and I'm guilty of this, is that I don't take safety isn't the number one thing I think about every day. I so care about my staff. I so care that they want to get home. But it's definitely operations driven. So typically operations is one of those things that kind of takes a priority. When I saw this accident triangle a couple years ago, I was like, man, this is something that's really, really excellent. I couldn't figure out the numbers, but just in your business, switch safety from a negative to a positive. And what I mean by that is taking this triangle and sitting there saying, on average, we need 600 near misses or whatever that number is within your business. Every 600 near misses, we have a minor accident. And every 30 accidents, we have a serious injury. And then with every serious injury, we have one fatal incident. So in my career at landscaping, I've had in my circle of influence of companies I know or of companies I've worked for, we've had 3 deaths. So you think that's for me, I've been 30 years, that's one every 10 years. We've either had a death on site or one of the staff have died. So not something that like all 3 of those were crappy incidences, just one of those things that just happened. But it is one of those things. So celebrating near misses is really, really important. So instead of hiding near misses from people, you need to celebrate them and start maybe for every 10 near misses, we do a gift card or something like that. So turn near misses into a positive, not into a negative. We have near misses every day. And we know that we're having them every day. We just don't celebrate them, and people try to hide them when stuff goes wrong. So again, just take it from a negative to a positive, and you're going to get buy-in from your staff. Next slide. On job descriptions, again, we're trying to give you a heads up, to again retain great staff, keep them, and onboard them well. So job descriptions are really, really important. Again, when I started out, it was jump in a truck and cut grass, come back at the end of the day. Tomorrow morning, you're going to jump in the truck and do it again. But that's not this generation. The staff that we're looking for need more direction. They're looking for the accountability that goes with that. They're looking for clarity. They're looking at some sort of measurement tool to do part of their job. If you just send them out every day without any direction, without clarity, without some accountability, without some sort of performance metrics, they will not last there. They will feel lost, right? They're looking for companies that are doing this. And the best companies that do this really, really well have high accountability. They have clarity, they have measure performance, and they become people where they become places where people want to stay. So again, if you don't do job descriptions, Landscape Ontario has some stuff, ChatGPT has stuff. This should not take you very long to do that. If you're looking for a specific job description you might not have, send me an email. I have tons of job descriptions I'd be able to share with you. But you have to create some sort of job description with that. You have to review it regularly. Again, it was one of those things where it was like, if I told you were doing a good job, I never had to tell you again unless there wasn't. So, in my relationship with my wife, I never say to her, I told you on the day that we got married that I love you. If anything changes, I'll let you know. That doesn't work, right? I wouldn't have a great marriage if that. And that's the same type of thing. So you need to be regular. You need to review those job descriptions. You need to review that performance. You need to review that accountability. And the staff do want the feedback. Now, it's hard for us as managers, as owners, to figure out how to give that feedback because most of us are afraid of that because we were never taught it or shown it. But you have to do a good job. One of the resources that I talk about all the time when it comes to HR is there's a book called Crucial Conversations. It's a white book with red lettering. Really, really great book. So if you're looking for it, I could probably grab it off my shelf actually. But Crucial Conversations is an amazing book. If you are a manager, you worked into a manager, you're an owner, and you struggle with hard conversations, buy that book, get an Audible, buy it, whatever it is. You will never, ever, ever regret not reading that book, because it will change your perspective on having hard conversations. So that's that. So again, great job description, easy to get to now. Create them again, get a signature date. Really, really important, especially if you ever have to exit a staff member. Having this job description is going to help you a lot with some sort of employment contract. Next one. Okay, strategic planning. So this part of the conversation, I love long-term vision. I love having a future for Nextra. I love having the future here in the future of Landscape Ontario. I love long-term planning, so that's just, I'm passionate about it. I love it. I like to kind of figure out where we're going to be 10 years from now. So in that strategic planning book, it talks a lot about stuff that you need to be about, conversations in that strategic planning that we're going to cover here. So next slide. So it talks about the W's of strategic planning, how to do a corporate plan. It talks about how to do a sales and marketing plan. Operations is typically, we're pretty strong. Most of us are pretty strong in there. It talks about HR planning. How do we plan on technology, which is changing rapidly currently right now? And then the most important thing, I think, as an industry right now is succession. So if you're an owner right now, and let's say you're like me and you're 50 and above, if you do not have a succession plan right now, that's part of a strategic plan. We're coming into the winter season. This is when most people want to talk about this type of stuff. So these are the 5 things that we can talk about. Next slide. So who should be part of a strategic plan? So the owner needs to be part of it. Obviously, if you have a divisional leader, let's say you have a maintenance division leader or a design build leader, or someone that runs the office for administration team for you. Maybe it's someone in charge of sales, operations. And then typically, if you've never done this before, or if you have a bigger team, a facilitator does help this conversation. Someone who has hosted these type events before. I just came back from a client for a 2-day. I just came back from Belleville today, where I did a 2-day strategic plan for 3. We did a 10-year, 3-year, 1-year, and we did some quarterly goals. But just kind of going back and being like, where does the business 10 years from now? And where does everyone who is sitting around that table want to see the business go? So, and again, this is investing in people. This does have a cost. It's expensive to do this, to have everyone out of operations go rent a room somewhere, maybe at a hotel or conference center, get it catered. Hiring a facilitator. It's not cheap to do all that type of stuff, but trust me, the buy-in you will get from the team, the clarity you will get from the team is priceless when you do that. So those people should be who you should have attend. Next. So what do you talk about in these strategic meetings? So, like as I said, you want to talk about a vision. I love vision. Some people struggle with this. Some people just aren't wired to think that far ahead. But what is the business? What is the vision for what we're doing? And the vision isn't just, well, we cut grass and put plants in someone's backyard. It's something bigger than that. It's something bigger. That's like, some great visions are like, the vision's hard. We want to be the greatest landscape contractor in Southwest Ontario that people want to come to. Something like, we build amazing backyards. So some sort of vision, sorry, if you're creative or your marketing team, that they can do this way better. So it takes some work crafting. But again, as an owner, as a team, talk about that type of stuff. You need to talk about mission. What is the actual focus that we do? Right? We are focused on, maybe you concentrated on condos, right? So our mission is to service high-end condos in a certain area, right? What's the mission? What's the statement that we're looking at? If you look at team sports, they do this all the time. That's a great thing about team sports. I love seeing team sports when you walk into you get to see a video walking into a locker room. A lot of those team sports or stuff like that have those mission vision statements written on the wall. And it's really good to do that. So do a SWOT analysis. So if you've never done a SWOT analysis before, a SWOT is just an acronym. So what is your strengths you currently have? What are your weaknesses you currently have? What are some opportunities that we may be able to take advantage of? And what are the threats? So really, it can just become 4 pieces of paper, write the points down. And hopefully you have more strengths and opportunities than you have weakness and threats. But then really what you can do then, the weakness and threats are stuff that you can start working on. All right. So maybe there's a competitor that is, maybe you have a competitor that's really being really strong right now. That's a threat for you. We did one the other day with an irrigation company. And this past year has been really tough on irrigation companies because it rained so much. So the threat they had, or the weakness, was the weather. Right? They can't do anything about the weather, but it really affected their revenue because it was so wet. So people didn't know that the irrigation system wasn't running properly because it rained every day. So some of those threats and weaknesses are something you can control, and others you can't. Core values exercise is a great exercise to do this. We always just get a piece of whiteboard out on a whiteboard, or just on something on a wall, and just start writing out what our core values are. I always ask questions like, think of your best employee. Who's your unicorn? And why do you love that unicorn within your organization? Right. So you get words like always committed, always willing to do stuff. Um, you know, just willing to go the extra mile. So you'll get a lot of descriptive words when you do that. Same thing. Why do we like our clients? Right. They have trust in us. They love what we do. We always give them education. So you'll start to see some words. So you get the full list of words. And then I usually do it on the other side of a board or another side of scrap paper, where I'm like, okay, now tell us about the worst employee we have and what don't we like about them. Right. And then you can kind of switch it around to like, this person's always lazy. Well, what's the opposite of lazy? Right. This person gossips. Okay. So we want someone that doesn't do that. So, and then maybe you get 20 words, and then you can start to see some grouping of the words together and get some other ones. Core values is one of those things where if you come up with them, I always have people sit on them for at least a year. So don't get core value posters made and post them everywhere. Because what happens is when you start to do some of these exercises, you're going to realize that, hey, I really like this word, but I think this word's better, right? So as you mature, it's kind of like a fine wine. As it matures, as you get a little bit better, you'll maybe define those words a little bit. So to me, 1 year, maybe two, before you start making posters, or you're gonna realize that you're gonna have to take some posters down. So, but allow just kind of that core values to simmer and to talk about them. The goals and objectives, again, this goes back to job descriptions where it says goals and objectives. We always like to know, we want to know, like 10 years from now, what type of goal, like where are we going to be? Maybe in 10 years from now, we need to have a new shop. Maybe 10 years from now, we need to have another division. Maybe 10 years from now, we know maybe we're good at tracking our sales goals. So 10 years from now, we can actually sit there and say, based every year, if we're going to do, say 10 to 15% annual increase every year over 10 years, you can actually get a sales goal together. So what are those goals? What are those objectives? A lot of times we're doing succession planning now. So a lot of time you get the owner sitting there saying, hey, in 10 years, I don't want to be in the day-to-day business. I want to be working on the business, or I want to be semi-retired. Again, for those people in the room that are sitting there, to hear that, they're thinking about it. They're thinking in their head, what's happening with the owner? So actually just have some sort of conversation around succession planning, whatever it is really good. And then has to have some actionable plans out of it. So we love the US system, and it's really structured that way. So it talks about 10 years, 3 years, 1 year goals every quarter. And then it gets down to 7-day actionable items. So some sort of plan that you can put in place to actually sit there and say, this was a great conversation, but at the end of the strategic plan, we just don't want to put it in a book and put it on the shelf. We want to be able to talk about it and actually refer back to it. And if you can refer back to it once a week, or in your one-on-ones, or in your job descriptions, then you'll get some actual traction with it for that. So really great exercise. It does cost some money, but if you do it well, you will want to do it again. People will sit there and say, this was one of the best meetings we've ever had, to be able to do that. Next slide. When to do it, like I said a little bit, I got ahead of myself. I got excited. For sure, annually. Again, this is a great time of year to do it. A lot of people are like, for Landscape Ontario members, it's kind of like Congress. You get back from Christmas, you do Congress, and it's like, okay, let's start planning for it. We love reviewing those things every quarter, just to go through it. And then again, if you can get it into some sort of weekly conversation, that's great. Next slide. Where offsite, I already talked about that. Don't do it in your office. It's just not, it doesn't have as much of an impact. But go find something. There's lots of places that can rent you a room, or maybe find a local church or something that'll do that. Do it in a living room. We've done these in the living room before. During COVID, we were doing these strategic plans just outside. So we've done it outside on furniture, like on lawn furniture, like early spring, and we've done it with blankets in front of a campfire. So something like that. Be creative, but definitely do it off site so you're not distracted by the operations. Yeah, so these are the couple of books I talked about. Sorry, these are other books that I talked about. So the Four Disciplines of Execution is really, really good. Sean Covey, he writes some great books. Good to Great. Anything by Jim Collins is awesome. There's a book called Strategic Planning that gives you a good book. And then Traction, I kind of recorded that. I kind of said EOS or Traction. This is a great book by Gino Wickman on kind of creating it calls it entrepreneurial operating system that'll give you the structure to have those conversations and track them and go through that type of stuff. So that's a great book if you've never read that book before. If you ever want these books, I have them. I'm happy to send you a book. We love giving away books. So if you email me and say, hey, I really like this Good to Great, I will send you that book, no charge, nothing, because that's how much I believe in people reading. So, all right, next one. Again, we talked about the SWOT analysis, so I'm not going to spend much time here. But again, this is a great template you can have that just shows ask these questions. So it just gets you going. Next. So the other topics that it talks about there is in your corporate plan. You can do a corporate plan, which is kind of that what I talked about, that vision, mission, all that type of stuff. Sales and marketing plan. This is a great one. There's some great companies that specialize in helping contractors in Ontario and across Canada. And they're going to ask you some great questions. Really, what is it? What do you want? What are your sales goals? What's your closing rate? All that type of stuff. Financial plan. Again, what do we think we're going to sell for each division? What is the margin we're looking for? Gross margin, net margin, all that type of stuff. How much we always talk about percents over dollars. HR, again, if you have an HR person, they'll want a plan, and then technology plan. This is the first time I actually read about a technology plan, but just actually looking at all the technology you have and say, what's the lifespan of it? Like right now, like our smartphones they seem to have a lifespan right now, right? And it's just, but if you can sit there and say, hey, we're going to flip over our phones every 2 to 3 years, and we get a regular cycle of that, just like we do equipment, then you can start doing that. How often should we replace laptops? How often should we do desktops? Just how often should we do all that type of stuff? How long do we do a server? Right? Because that stuff comes up when there's a pinch point. And typically it comes up because something bad has happened. So just trying to put some sort of technology plan in place. Next. Again, same thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. Again, mission, vision, core values. What's the owner's intent? That might be a little bit hard for some owners if they've never shared that with them. But it's really important, again, for the owner to have a vision for the staff to buy in. The staff are thinking about it. So as an owner, you may want to be able to have a conversation around that. Next slide. Sales and marketing, current conditions. What's your ideal client look like? What's the marketing strategy? What's a guarantee you have? How much do you want to spend? This is a big one when you're doing this. Your marketing company is going to ask you this. So typically, we always say around 2% of your top line sales should go to marketing. If you haven't done a website, like if you haven't upgraded a website, or if you don't have like a good CRM system or anything like that, you might have to spend 3%. But if you're looking at budgeting for some sort of marketing budget, and that your marketing budget could be for recruiting as well. But something that does a website, does a CRM, does some Facebook ads or Instagram ads or something like that, 2% is probably a good starting point for you to figure out. If you've spent 2%, 2%, and 2% a couple years in a row, then you could probably start getting down to like 1%. But if you haven't spent very much money in the past, don't be surprised when you jump into a marketing team, how much it should cost you to do that. So, but have 2% in your head. So next. Finance, really, really important. It talks about budgets, KPIs, cash flow, and reporting. Again, something else I'm excited about. So if I get ahead of myself, I apologize. But next slide. Okay, operations. So in there, it talks about what services were offered, what type of management structure you want, what type of equipment you want, and some sort of budget. So the the thing I see all the time over and over again, and our industry is notorious for this, is as you start a business, you have to take every type of work. Like we were saying yes to everything, and you just have to do that. When you're at zero, it doesn't matter what Mrs. Jones wants you to do, you're going to do it, right? Because you need that work. And Mrs. Jones is asking you to do it, so you're going to do it. Once you get past the 5 to 10 year mark, what we find is most owners are still saying yes to Mrs. Jones. She's still Mrs. Jones says, "Can you clean my gutters?" Yes, we can do that for you. Can you, uh, whatever? Can you take out my furnace filter? Yes, we can do that for you. As you mature as a company, you have to start saying no to a bunch of that stuff. You really have to start being focused on what you're doing. So the more focused you are, the more successful, the more profitable you're going to be. So the owner struggles with this, right? Because we had original founding members that saw work in us, and they did it. They're typically, those founding customers aren't paying what they should be paying. But we have to eventually get past that as an owner and start charging people for the services they are, and we need to start saying no. When we're saying no, it doesn't mean you just say no to Mrs. Smith and say goodbye, but maybe finding someone else that can help Mrs. Smith out. So really just make sure you start focusing as your company matures, start focusing your offering. Your management structure needs to be really, really important. And again, depending on the type of service you offer, so your management for how to on design build structure is much different than your management on maintenance. You typically have less managers in maintenance because it's reoccurring. There's not as much moving parts. That manager needs different skill set. That manager needs to be looking for quality, how to manage people, not on site. It's typically more routine. So sometimes they're managing weather and absentees. If you're a manager of design build, there's a lot more details. There's like managing suppliers and managing timelines and managing the order of operation. So different skill set for different management structure that you need. Equipment, again, if you're focused on one type of work or two different types of work, the equipment operations is easy. I love when I walk into a yard and it's like all the trucks for maintenance are all the same. They have the same truck, same trailer. They all look the same, standardized. It's great. And then here's the truck we use for design build, right? But too many yards I walk into, it's like different colored trucks, different brands of trucks. And it's typically the owners being like, "Oh, we found a good deal on this truck," or "We need this truck without a plan." So if you can standardize your equipment per division, you're going to have way more success on it. And then operating budget. You need an operating budget for each one of those. Mostly we're selling hours in our industry. So how many hours? How many hours for this design build are we doing? How many hours for maintenance are we doing for this type of site? So some sort of budget that you can do. Next. On the HR one, again, so organizational structure, your staff requirements, how to do training, how to do your policies, recruitment, retention, and you need a budget. Organizational structure is just org chart, right? The one thing I love about org charts, and we've started to do this last couple of years with clients, is we actually start doing a current org chart, like maybe for this season, but then also we've done an org chart 3 years from now. So if we've actually put a sales increase in for the next 3 years, and it shows that, let's say we're having 2 more maintenance crews coming along, do we need to hire? Maybe we need to hire, maybe that takes us to 6 maintenance crews. Well, we're going to have to find maybe a junior manager or an operations manager, something like that. So going ahead and sitting there and saying, okay, here's an org chart for 3 years from now, and here's a bunch of gaps we have are really, really important. And that kind of shows growth opportunity for people who are coming in to be like, hey, I know I'm here, but there's 2 more positions I could go to, or I could apply for, or I could work towards to be able to do that. The one mistake we see too many times is creating an organizational structure or an org chart with names. So you have to take names out of it. This is what stalls most people out. Make an org chart based on roles, titles, job descriptions, not based on names. Because a lot of times, most of us, when we start creating these org charts of what today looks like, typically we have 1 or 2 people that are just in the wrong seat, right? Maybe they've been with us the longest. Maybe they're in a management position they shouldn't be. And then we're like, well, let's make this position. And the first thing you talk about is, well, that person's not made for that. You're like, right, but it stops the whole process going. So, sorry. So make an org chart today without names, just titles, and make one for 3 years from now. Again, that's a great vision exercise to do a strategic plan. That then will create some staffing requirements. So you need to know that. We always high level budgeting. How much should a crew, a maintenance crew of 2 to 3 people should do 200 to $250,000 a year. So you're having $2 million of the work. It's around 8 crews, right? So you just know I need 8 trucks. I need 8 times 3 people or 2 people, whatever it is that you're running. So it gives you some sort of staffing requirements to be able to do that. Put a training program in place. Again, what's the basic needs that you need for people? Like the Ontario government, Canadian government has minimum requirements for training, right? But then what else do you want them to do based on their role? Again, training by role. So if you have a third on a crew, you maybe just do the required ones, but then you maybe want to do them on let's say you want to train them on trimmer, push more, and riding more. And maybe you want to train them on a fueling. But you don't necessarily want to train them on truck and trailer, right? So if you move up to a second on a maintenance crew, then we're like, hey, we're going to teach you truck and trailer now. And then same thing, if you move up to a lead hand, then you're going to get some more courses. So again, put that stuff in place early on for the role. Policies, I hate policies, unfortunately, but they're required. But again, having good policies, again, ChatGTP, Landscape Ontario, there's all kinds of policies out there you can follow and do that. Recruitment's really good. We talked about recruitment. We talked about retention. And again, you need an HR budget. If you're going to hire an HR person, you need to know. And to me, not enough companies have an HR person focused on this. The owner's doing it. The owner is jaded. And you need someone who actually just has empathy for people, who likes policies. I always say this person is wired much different than I am, which is great. But you need some sort of budget to be able to hire someone to concentrate on that. And as an owner, take it off your plate. So next slide. So technology, again, your hardware, your software, how do you do telecommunications? What's the current technology you've been using? Do some market research right now. Lots of great softwares out there right now that we're seeing. It's really great. Like you need some sort of software that can have some sort of business management software. There's no need anyone to be on paper anymore. Find a business management software. Congress is coming up. There'll be lots of companies on the floor. Choose one that you think is best for you. Ask around what are people using. But everything should be on your smartphone now. And again, just so it's all digital, it's good for time tracking. It creates, accuracy on there. If you're doing snow, it creates logs for you, GPSs, all that type of stuff. And then again, the one thing we see the mistake all the time when you're implementing technology, you just need a plan. Okay. You just can't, when you buy a software, let's say you buy an operational software, you're going to have to understand that you're going to have to change the way you do business to match the software. Okay. And people push back on that all the time. And I'm saying to you, don't. A lot of times the way the software is set up is probably better in operations than the way you might be running it. But people say all the time, they look at new technology and like, well, we don't do it that way. We don't do it that way. And I'm like, actually, you probably should do it that way because it's probably more efficient and it's probably a better way to do it rather than that's just the way we always do it. So if you're looking at that software, don't get caught up in this isn't the way we do it type of thing. So, and again, put some more money towards it. This one right now, so many people are getting spammed. One of our clients the other day got their email hacked and the company, like, I think it's kind of like a hostage situation. They got all their passcodes and it was like they wanted $25,000 to get all the stuff back and everything unlocked. That will, like, first of all, most of us don't have $25,000 just to give over to some sort of person that holds your password. But the opposite thing is just like, that's not what you came in today. That wasn't something that was on your plan to be able to do that. So even having someone come in and audit your security in your business is really, really good. I don't do this enough and I should do it. And I actually did it last week based on that, but you need to change your passwords. Just constantly doing that because it's just happening way too often. You open an email, you shouldn't, they're just sitting in the background waiting for somebody to come across a big EFT transfer. or they're emailing, especially on bigger businesses. Someone's emailing the accounts receivable people like, hey, can you send me the list of accounts receivable? Then they're taking that list and pretty much emailing everyone and being like, if you don't pay this within, 5-10 hours, we're going to send you to court. And people do it, right? People are sending money because they're afraid, right? And then you can never get that money back. So again, that's probably one thing that was not in the book, is just you got to protect yourself against scams that are out there. So next, marketing, sales. Next. So learning objectives of this book: development, implement advertising, promotional programs, practices to enhance your company's image, public relations strategies, pricing policies, customer service standards, manage your company sales process, and understanding implement good estimating practices. So all great topics we're going to talk about high level. Next. So in the book, it talks a little bit about, and a lot of owners right now know this type of stuff, but just kind of it's a good reminder, even for myself when I read the book, to do this. So there's some competitive advantages that you have, that each one of us have. So again, it's just understanding, maybe this is something you can identify in a SWOT analysis. Maybe you do like your SWOT analysis for your marketing, but do we have a cost advantage? It talks about avoiding unless you're really good at one thing that you do over and over again. So right now, the one thing we're seeing, especially in the bid world of snow, so if you're bidding municipalities, townships, anything that is an open tender bid, the price has dropped significantly for most of the type of stuff. So with that right now, and that's just a lot of guys hurting financially. Maybe they didn't recover enough overhead in their design build firm, whatever it is, they're looking for work. So what they're doing is they're lowering their price to win work, right? That doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the industry, doesn't help anyone to be able to do that. So it's really important that this is not an advantage you taken care of unless you can do something really, really good. Like if you do one thing over and over and over again, and you're really good at it, then you can be something like we do linear feet or we do square foot and stuff like that. Stuff like maybe you do asphalt really, really well. But most of us in our industry don't do things really, really well. There's not something so consistent. I can't think of anything right now that you can get really good cost advantage for. That's really beneficial for that type of thing. So I'm sure there is, but majority of us don't have that ability. So marketing advantage. So created by the ability of the firm to differentiate its product or service from the competition. This one happens all the time. It was interesting. We did a SWOT analysis a couple of weeks ago, and one of the threats they have is a company that's a direct competitor for the company we're working with, but their marketing is amazing. They don't do as well as a product. They don't do as much quality. They haven't been around as much, but it really doesn't matter because the marketing is incredible. These people have spent tons of much marketing. They're making it look professional. And right now, people want that. That makes them feel good, right? So the biggest threat they had was this company coming in who is almost brand new, that are just marketed really well, and they're going to take a market share from you. So just because you do great work, you have a great customer base, you have great staff, doesn't mean you're going to get the work. You do need to make sure you take that marketing advantage. Typically at that, the first thing I ask, how much money have you spent on marketing, right? And then people tell me, like, I always say, they'll give me $1. And I'm like, okay, what's that as percent of top line revenue? So typically, if you've spent 1% to 2%, this is not your issue. But if you haven't spent very much money over the last couple of years, then you're going to fall behind in this. So you need to spend that. Again, lots of great companies out there that are helping contractors do this. Or maybe it's something that you're passionate about, that you're really good at. Not a strength I have. I can't wordcraft anything, but it is something that can really help you. Market niches, the more focused you are, the more profitable you are. I've hinted at this a little bit. I grew up, my dad told me, I forget the thing. Anyway, there's a phrase like, you could do it all, but you're not master of anything really. So just it kind of left me. So again, the most profitable business, the most successful businesses right now are the ones that are niching down. So for us, as a landscape consultant firm, we have people all the time call me and be like, hey, I run a I run I granted, I've seen you before. Maybe I heard one of your talks or someone knows me personally and they're like, I have a whole building business. Can you help me? And I'm like, probably I could help you. I could teach you EOS and I could do some of this stuff, but I'm really not as helpful as I can with a contractor because I don't know their numbers. I don't know their benchmarking. I don't know their KPIs they need to be measuring. So the more we, yeah, thank you. Jack of all trades, master of none. Thank you, Brando. Appreciate that. See, it's a great community. So yeah, the jack of all trades, master of none is something that is just we got to get that out of our world. And if my dad was listening to this right now, he would tell me that I was wrong. Um, but yeah, it is. We got to get better at this stuff and stuff. So the more focused we are, the more probability. And again, typically the more focus comes into the owner hasn't done that. We haven't said no to too many things yet. So the more we say no to, the more opportunities we're going to say yes to, which seems not intuitive, but it is actually true. So if you do run maintenance, focus on one type of maintenance. Maybe it's condos, maybe it's small industrial, maybe it's hospitals. Um, but right now, like in Ontario, if you're trying to do big commercial maintenance, you're trying to go after malls, you're trying to go after big strip, there's just so many people in that market right now, right? I think right now there's a huge gap in the condo world, right? Now they're harder to do and they're harder to manage, but people are fleeing the condo market and getting into malls and commercial work and institutional work, and there's just way more people in that market, and the market's getting diluted. So and that may change, but right now you got to find that niche and double down on it, and you won't regret it. Next slide. The market research. Again, this was great. This is something I learned as well. Again, if you hire a company that focuses on our industry, they're going to have this stuff for you. Okay. So if you don't have a marketing company and you're looking for this information, there is all kinds of information out there. So looking for trade associations, Landscape Ontario got tons of stuff for us. CNLA, who does stuff all across Canada, has got stuff. If you're looking for snow focused stuff, SIMA has all kinds of information. There's so much data out there, so much resources out there for you. Just have to find it. There's government statistics out there, all kinds of information you can find. And then local chamber of commerce are obviously a resource too. Never used the chamber of commerce before for a resource, but apparently they have that type of service. So the kind of secondary data is there. The primary data that we would typically see: observation and non-reactive questions or reactive surveys. So for me, I just gave you primary data, I guess. Maybe you want to call it secondary data. But I gave you the thing like, hey, there's an opportunity here to get into condos in the Ontario market, right? I'm observing that. I've seen the behavior of it. So it's primary data. I'm seeing the behavior of it. I see the price dropping on it. And I see people coming to me like, man, I do not want to do condos, but I want to go after a mall. So we can see that right there. The one mistake I make, I'm guilty of this, is that I will, in my own business right now, someone will come to me like, Grant, you should provide this type of service for contractors. And I'm like, that's really great. And I'll come up with the whole service and I'll price it out and I'll do it. I think I really love it. And I'll send it back to that person and be like, hey, I figured out the service you asked for. Here's what it costs. And they're like, well, I wouldn't pay that for that. Instead of actually, when that person says to me, hey, would you offer this type of service? I need to be able to do like a questionnaire or surveys or ask more people before I spend time and energy into building a service that maybe only a small amount of people will buy. So as owners, so many of us are entrepreneurs. We love that little shiny thing out there. And we chase too many of those shiny things. And a lot of times it takes us away from our core business. And it's actually doesn't become practical. So if you can kind of have someone hold you accountable for that, when you see that shiny thing out there that you think you want to do, have someone hold you accountable, be like, hey, what's the data we have on this, right? Like you've observed it, maybe you've seen it, but is there data to back that up that that's a service we may be able to do? So again, a primary mistake. I make this mistake way too many times. So when I read this, I was like, oh, I need to do this. Next slide. This was a good one. Your competitive example of competitive matrix. So the nice thing about this one is you can fill in the questions for you. So again, down the left-hand side, you can percent of trained staff, how they solved financially, do they have a good reputation, what is their reputation for, and then just pick 3 or 4 competitors across the top, right? And again, some of the stuff you may be guessing at. But a lot of times the market's really small, and you can pretty much guarantee you're going to be, I would say you're going to be 80% close on this type of stuff. So if you're looking at getting into, like, let's say you're going to want to get into commercial snow, you can put across the five major players in your area and like, how many of their staff are trained? How are they financially solid? Have they been around? Do they have a good reputation? What are they reputation for? And all of a sudden, like, four of these companies have check, check, check all the way along. You're going to have a hard time getting into this market because a lot of these four players already might be in there, right? So it's like, okay, we got to really think, or we got to put a lot more resources in heading into this market than maybe we pick something else that doesn't have a bunch of that type of stuff. So again, good opportunity to do this. I like the format that the book talks about. Again, just forces you to ask those questions. Next slide. Four P's of marketing. So again, product, price, place, promotion. So yeah, so again, what's the type of product you're offering? Really, really important. For us, it's limited product, really. We're cutting grass, mulching, plowing snow. In the design build world, there's way more, but really at the end of the day, we're making some sort of backyard, right? Or a front yard, somewhere where someone can enjoy their backyard. So the products they're not huge, right? Depending on someone's budget. But if you're looking at someone's competitive budget, the products are fairly narrow. The pricing is fairly close too. Like, honestly, we're paying the same amount for trucks. We're paying close to the same amount for materials. We're paying the same amount for labor. So realistically, the pricing model is going to stay pretty close as well, right? We pay the same amount in rent typically as far as a scalability go. Where the place is it? So where are we doing it? Again, this one doesn't change a lot. Obviously, the GTA has way more competition, but there's way more money there, right? We have clients. We were just in Alberta the other day, last week, and it was interesting to just see the market in Alberta, and the snow market in Alberta is changing rapidly. Just how they do stuff. Like, what we could sell in Toronto isn't what we can sell out there. So the place does matter. And the last P on there is promotion. So how are you going to promote it? And again, that's where your marketing company can help you and get you that extra advantage. Next slide. Reasons people buy. Really quick, rational reasons. I'm a very rational person, so these are all mine. Economic of the purchase. What am I going to use it for? Is it required? Does it increase my profit? Is it simple operations? Is it performance? Is it labor savings? Is it time saving? Does it save me space? Is it durable? Is it easy to repair? Right. So those are rational reasons why people buy. And the emotional reasons are, and again, these are where a lot of like high-end products can actually shine, right? So if you have a high-end product, people are buying for this, right? The thing, right? So pride of appearance, like, if you're the contractor of contractor and people want your sign up front, it's because of appearance, right? I was able to get X landscaper to come to my house, right? So the pride of ownership is a desire, status, trend. Desire to be intimate. Is it safety? Does it give me a sense of, is it not fear? Is it desire of control, desire of security? Is it convenient, right? Like, I can't, like, just all the food delivery apps right now are just that convenient, right? It's emotional. And desire to be unique, and is it curious? I love Apple stuff. I'm not fanatic of Apple stuff, but Apple people can be desired to be unique. Like, they line up for the next iPhone, right? And it's because of the experience that the iPhone is, right? Some people would argue that the hardware and software, or the software, is now different, but just the experience of it, and to say you have the newest iPhone, right? They've done a great job with that. And that's why people would line up to buy the latest Apple stuff before it even releases. So next one, pricing strategy. Again, I talked a little bit about this. So your pricing should include your labor, your materials, your equipment. Any subcontractor you use has to recover your overhead that's there, any contingencies, and then your profit. Again, we're going to talk a little bit of this on the financials, but most of these are a percent. We always say a percent of all these type of things. Again, we're most of this stuff we are pretty close in. Like, again, within a couple percent, we pay the labor. Big geographic swings, if like Toronto from maybe out east, there is some labor differences. But if you're in Ontario, we're almost paying the same amount of labor So people think it's different, but it's really not. We see people all the way at time. So again, lots of pricing strategies there. Next slide. Corporate finance management. Again, I'm passionate about this. So if I get ahead of myself, please forgive me. But yeah, this is something I'm passionate about. This is something I wish I had learned earlier in my career. And I think I've shared that story before. We had a design build firm that didn't go well. We couldn't make any money at it. And it's basically no one taught me this stuff. I knew how to build beautiful backyards, but I didn't know how to make money at it. So I have learned this the hard way, and I'm kind of become passionate about it. So understanding the learning objectives in this financial one, understanding your income statement or your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet under some key financial ratios, how to evaluate current financial performance, your financial performance industry benchmarks. Again, I can help you with that, or consultant help you with that. There's lots of numbers out there for that. And then making decisions based on your analysis of financial statements. Most owners make financial statements emotionally, not based on numbers. Okay. So we got to get away from that. If you knew your numbers and the numbers just tell a story, we would make different business decisions. Next slide. Next slide there, Carrie. Carrie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Okay, so again, we talked about how to develop a budget for your company. It understands the concept of business cycles. We're going through a business cycle right now, economic cycle as well, where again, like even since COVID, these cycles that we've seen have like come and gone so quickly right now. So understanding what those cycles are and how to do it is really good. Understand job costing and break-even analysis. Most contractors don't know this. They understand job costing as far as like labor material, but job costing as far as labor material, like your equipment, breaking that down into more, and then what's your break even analysis. So every day that you go out, a crew goes out and cuts grass, how much does it need to make just to break even before you make any profit? And that changes by every truck, every crew. So it's constantly, so you need to know that. How to manage working capital within your business. The trend we've seen over the last couple of years since we started this is that a lot of owners that we worked with were always like, we don't have any debt. We own all our vehicles, and they were very, very proud that they have no operational debt. The problem with that is then they don't have any cash, right? But then on the other side of it now, we're seeing a trend where too many guys have gone to leasing or like leasing vehicles, and then they're not having any, they have way too much capital debt. And there's no equity within the business, and there's no value on their balance sheet. So we got to come back a little bit. You know, when interest rates were low, people were giving equipment away, and honestly, I think the industry gave too much equipment to too many guys. And again, there's going to be a reckoning here very soon. There's going to be equipment come back in the market the guys can't afford, but how to work with that capital. And there's some ratios you need to be aware of that you can figure that out. But just because you can get a lease from CAT doesn't mean that you can afford that lease, right? Those people are the guys that are selling you this are salespeople. They're getting commission off of it. They're working really, really hard to make your numbers work for the finance department. They're not concerned that you can pay for this piece of equipment 2 or 3 years down the road, or if you have a slowdown, right? Their goal is to make money off of you and to get a commission. So we see that. Understanding your inventory management. Again, landscape contractors, not as much. Big time though, if you own a nursery, garden center, salt for a lot of guys right now. If you own a salt supply yard, salt's a huge thing. Like we don't have much salt. Again, that's all the money that you've spent that's sitting something in some sort of inventory that you can't get cash out, right? So understanding how to manage that properly and not putting too much cash out when you don't need it. Making cash flow projections. If you have a hard time sleeping at night because you don't know if I have enough cash to make payroll or what's coming in, coming out, create a good cash flow projection spreadsheet. That will change your life. And then again, understanding when to lease, purchase, rent equipment. And I think you need to be doing all three of these things. I don't think we rent enough equipment still. Again, I think that pendulum swung a little bit where purchasing or leasing it was so cheap and the money was cheap, so I was able to do that. But I think we do need to get back into renting equipment, even seasonal equipment. I love like when guys have a green industry or green season, and then they need say 4 or 5 more trucks for the winter. Instead of going buy 3 or 4 new trucks, just go rent them for the winter. Like there's lots of companies now that will rent you a truck 550 with a salter and a plow. There's no need to go buy a 550 right now if you don't have purpose for it for the summertime. You'll pay for it almost the same amount, but you don't need it. And again, if something happens, same thing if you rent, let's say you get a 1 year contract that's really big and only has a 1 year, don't go and buy all that equipment for that 1 year contract. Just go rent it. If you get a 3 year program for it, especially if it's something specialized, then go buy it. But we don't leverage this enough. Next one. Conditions that lead to companies failing. Um, Again, I wish someone had explained this to me 15 years ago. So no financial plan. I didn't know how to talk finance. Again, I went to my tax accountant every year and he would come back to me like, great, you didn't make any money. I'm like, well, I worked harder than I did last year. How come I made less money? Right. But he was not able to make that connection. So I just didn't have a financial plan. I didn't know how to budget. I didn't know how to manage cash flow. I just didn't know how to do it. All I knew how to do was build great, beautiful backyards and get it done. So I didn't know how to do that. Again, poor cash flow management. Again, if you're struggling with this, there's great spreadsheets out there. If you have QBO right now, there's a great QBO is doing an amazing job right now with cash flow. If you actually start putting stuff in, it'll actually predict some of that stuff, especially if you have a high maintenance, reoccurring revenue theme or type business. It's really good for that. Not managing your AR and P, your accounts receivable, accounts payable. This should be something you talk about every week. If you're not talking about it every week, the right now, the people that ignore their accounts receivable are going to get caught because there's companies right now that are struggling to pay people. If you are not on top of that, you're not going to get paid. It's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you need to be on top of that all the time. Accounts payable, like like what people are paying right now in interest is killing people. So money is not free. And I'd rather put it into your bank account than into someone else's. So knowing cost of production, that we talked about that a little bit, not controlling your expenses. Again, I think during this economic times, be able to do that. One exercise I still love to do, I think we did it during COVID, was just go through your monthly reoccurring subscriptions. It's amazing how many subscriptions we buy into, how many softwares, like even for our small business, I think we have like 10 reoccurring subscriptions. We've seen Slack and Method, our CRM system, and QuickBooks, and all those type of Zoom, all that type of stuff. It just adds up so quick. So just figuring that out. Meals can be another one that can just add up right now. Really quick. Like, I love my steep tea, 1 milk, 1 sweetener for those of you who want to know. But 2 or 3, I can meet with a customer 2 or 3 times a day, right? If I buy that every time, it does add up, right? So just understanding those controlled expenses, improper financials or improper financing. Again, there's some companies out there right now that charge an enormous rate for financing equipment. So you need to look at the interest rate. Again, the ones that when you go to an equipment dealer, they're like, hey, I wasn't able to get you these two. I wasn't able to get you CAT financing, but I was able to find this third party. That third party might be charging twice as much interest on that piece of equipment, but they're willing to take the risk because maybe you have bad credit or you don't have any credit at all. So just make sure, just because you got it doesn't mean that it was a good deal. So, and then unmanaged growth. We've seen this over and over through COVID. We were great order takers, but so many people are not able to capitalize on this because we just grew too quick. So if you're growing 20% year over year, continuously 20% top line revenue, I would say that you're struggling with cash flow. You're probably struggling with systems. You're struggling with people, and it's just unmanaged. You got to be able to put a plan in place to be able to do that. Next slide. Again, daily stuff that you need to do. How much cash is in the bank? What's your balance? Bank balance. You need to be doing, to me, daily invoicing if you can. One of the things we talk about. Actually, we'll talk about this on the monthly one. Weekly ARAP. Again, most people are doing weekly payroll now. You need to do weekly cash flow. Monthly, you need to be doing your taxes, your monthly obligations, paying suppliers, do your journal entries, doing your reconciliations, your P&L reports, your month to date, year to date, budget versus actuals. This one a lot of contractors don't know about. If you own a lot of equipment, like let's say you're in that world of like, hey, I'm very proud of all the equipment I have. You need to get a depreciation spreadsheet from your accountant to bring some of those depreciations in every month into your P&L, right? And again, just guess at it. Better to be too high than too low. But what we see a lot of times is people think, hey, I'm making all kinds of money. And then the year-end accountant puts all their depreciation numbers in, and then their profit just disappears. I would rather every month your depreciation numbers going in, knowing what your equipment costs are, right? That the accountant's doing that. So a lot of accountants don't understand that. They don't want to do that for you, but you just gotta push them a little bit harder. On the monthly one as well is even something like invoicing. So it says invoicing daily. What we've really encouraged our contractors to do is start invoicing at the first of the month for the services that are happening that month. So for the month of November services, typically industry has been doing, we bill for like December. I'm going to bill you December 31st for December services. You don't have to do that. You can bill for December 1st services for the month of December. A lot of times, most people won't push back on that. Sometimes if you do a lot of big national accounts, you can't do that, but most of the local people will actually do that. Even if they don't pay you that month, at least the count of your 30 days starts on December 1st, not your 30 days starts on December 31st. So just look at your billing cycle, really, really do. Quarterly or even buy-in or twice a year, at least get your balance sheet updated. And typically you need your accountant to do that. Try to do that, especially if you're flipping a lot of equipment. We see this a lot. We don't tell the accountant, hey, we sold these 2 trucks or bought this or did whatever. And the accountant doesn't know that, right? So the balance sheet is that type of thing. And again, the balance sheet is your long-term health of the business. Next slide. Cash accounts versus accrual accounting. Again, this is something I didn't know. I didn't understand. So really it's just cash accounting is really what is in your cash, like what comes out of your account every day, right? So your leases come out of your account every day, whatever your lease payments come out. Your suppliers come out every day. Your materials come out. The deposits go in, right? The problem is like, especially I'm going to stay on deposits because deposits are a really good way to do this. A deposit is something someone gives you money ahead of a project, okay, for design build. So during COVID, we were having people give deposits 1 year in advance almost. Right, I'm going to put $30,000 down for a project that's going to start in 8 to 10, 12 months. Okay. A lot of times what people will do is they'll put that deposit and they record it into QuickBooks as income. Right. And then what happens is that income goes in and then you actually end up paying tax on that income because the government sees that as tax, as income coming in that you've earned, but you actually haven't earned that income yet. Okay. So what you can do is you can take that deposit and put it on the balance sheet and it shows that you actually haven't earned that money yet. Okay. So you don't pay tax on it until you actually bring it in there. Plus it is in your bank account. And I would encourage you to have another bank account in like that just has deposits. Because if you leave it in your P&L, you show that you're actually like, you actually took money in, but there's no expenses to go at it. So it throws your P&L out, right? You took $30,000 in, but you didn't buy any. Maybe you bought some material on it, but majority of the time for the first little while, you don't. You didn't put any labor towards that. You didn't put any material. There's no equipment. There's nothing else. It didn't cover any overhead or anything like that. Maybe you can say, hey, of this $30,000, 10 of it was design work. So you can bring that in, but understand there's this balance, right? We see, this is one thing I love, that I learned this early on. If you are maintenance and you have a big swing in your green season to white season, let's say you have a mall and it's $100,000 for the mall. They make 12 equal monthly payments, but the work is not kind of split 50-50. Maybe 80% of it is winter, 20% is green season. If you start taking in all that income in the green season, it's going to make it look like you're actually more profitable than you are because you have actually taken in unearned revenue. Okay. So let's say that every month you should be taking in $5,000 instead of $25,000. it makes it look really, really good, and it throws all your percents off. So you got to sit there and say, okay, of this monthly contract for this mall, how much is green season, and put that into your P&L, and the other part of it needs to stay on the balance sheet. So again, it's not as easy once you understand it, and once you understand and explain to your accountant, and they can help you with that, your bookkeeper, it makes all the difference in the world. But again, those support team people need your help with that. So again, just how you manage money, right? You're not just building stuff. Your financial statement layout should have your sales, direct costs. Again, sales based on divisions. So again, like most of us have like design build, we have enhancements, we have maintenance, we have snow, maybe we have salt, maybe we have removals. Again, so separating that out, just don't have one direct sales cost. Try to break it out as best you can. Then your gross margin, gross margin is all your direct costs. And then your overhead equals net profit. So again, that's what most people say is kind of what your net last year. Most of us, if you can do 10% at the bottom line as a contractor, you're doing really, really great. Most of us, the contractors we see, are at zero or below, because all the money they make, there's all this expense, and there's zero or less than that. Operational profit's really important. Operational profit, and what I mean by operational profit is that there's other opportunities that you can take in money in the business that we didn't necessarily earn through field. Stuff like student summer grants is money that you took in, the government gave you, that was an operational profit. If you just leave it in a sales item, it throws all your numbers off for a loop. Let's say that you sold a bunch of equipment, right? A bunch of guys are cashing out right now. Loaders, tractors, any piece of equipment right now has tons of equity. So you go sell loader and you make $50,000. If you put that $50,000 into the sales, just as a direct sale, it's going to affect, it's not operational profit. The operation did pay for that loader to get that, but the market actually earned that profit. So understanding like what we do on a P&L is we'll like operational profit, and then there's always a positive number below it to be like surplus assets have sold. Then you add another $50,000, right? But you need to separate that $50,000 out from your operational profit, especially if you're looking at selling your business, because that $50,000 isn't something you're going to earn every year. Maybe you lucked out this year, right? But you want to separate that as much as you can. Earned revenue versus earned revenue versus unearned revenue. Again, that's that load. That's a couple things. That's again, the mall example I gave you is really important. And the biggest one for this one is percents are more important than dollars. Dollars we get emotional on. Percents are what's important. What's your percent of revenue for labor for your division? What's the percent of equipment you should be running at? What's the percent of marketing money you should be spending at? So as the business grows and you take on more dollars, the percents shouldn't change. But if you're always constantly, and I was guilty of this, I would be like, oh my goodness, payroll was $50,000 this week or the last 2 weeks. And I'd start freaking out. But I wouldn't go back to like what the percent was, right? So maybe payroll was I'm aiming for 25% payroll. It was $50,000, but it was 23% payroll. That means that we did way more revenue with the current payroll we did. So that means we had a really good month. Now, if $50,000 is 30% of revenue, I start asking questions. I'm like, maybe we're missing revenue, or maybe we weren't efficient with it. The $50,000 is irrelevant. It's the percent that's more important. What you're running equipment at, what your overhead is at. So again, if you know the industry has benchmarks, they're there for you to learn, but it's really important to know those type of stuff. Next. Balance sheet. Balance sheet is pretty basic. It's not basic, but really understanding your balance sheet is just a long-term healthcare of the health check of your business. It's from day one that you started the business till today. Your P&Ls change every year. Every fiscal year, it gets reset to zero, right? So it's just one of those things where, when you're looking at buying a business, I want to see the long-term. I want to see the long-term health of the company, just not how the business. Maybe the business has done really well the last 2 years, and the P&Ls are really good, but the business doesn't have a long track record of it. So again, it's just a longer period of time that you want to do it. Again, most balance sheets are out of date. You need to have your accountant can update it with that information. So just understanding that. Next. Your assets, liabilities. Again, this is pretty much all most of this is about. So assets on your balance sheet are cash, what accounts receivables that you're going to take in inventory you have, any prepaid expenses that you might have made. Fixed assets are like equipment and machinery that you already own, buildings, land, investment, any patents you might have. And then again, minus the liabilities is what money you owe on your accounts receivable, what current payables, payroll you have coming up, accrued expenses. So a lot of times you can accrue a bunch of expenses if your tax account is good at doing that with you. Income tax, payroll tax, long-term debt. So maybe you have an operating line, all that type of stuff. Long-term debt, same thing. Shareholders loans. A lot of our companies have long-term loans like due to shareholder loans that are there, and then any retained earnings as well are there. So again, that's all it is: assets versus liabilities. Hopefully, you come out on the positive versus the negative side. Next slide. Managing a balance sheet, again, it's just a snapshot of all the assets and the liabilities. And again, just managing that type of thing. Hopefully, it's a positive number overall. Again, if you want to know more, there's lots of YouTube videos on that. Next. Evaluating financial performance. We can talk, this is going to be a great one. Financial reporting are a record of history. There's nothing you can do about it. Typically, it's already done is done. Are the numbers accurate? A lot of times, if you're not looking at them regularly, like once a month, they're not accurate. A lot of times we give information to bookkeepers, accountants, and they're guessing at where it's supposed to go. All this information is going. If you're trying to get divisional profitability numbers, a supplier invoice comes in and they don't know where to put it, right? Is this a design build? Is this an enhancement? Is this maintenance? So you're going to have to give your bookkeeper or accountant good, clear direction of where it has to go. But you need to know that in advance, and that's where the plan comes in. Are the numbers organized to give a clear story? Again, the numbers tell a story, good or bad, and then you can make a decision. Summarize the data to help. Whenever you're looking for a loan, they're looking for ratios, right? That's all the bank is doing. They're taking your P&L and they're running through different ratios. Those ratios change all the time. It's very frustrating, but that's it. They're just looking at your debt to equity ratio, your asset. What's the other one? There's there's all kinds of them right now, but they're looking for ratios that they just know that is your business prof. Can you keep generating cash? Those type of ratios shows trends. Again, just tells a story, allows you to compare your business with others. Again, if you know your percents, and then other people's percents, you can be like, hey, we're doing really, really well. Or hey, why is my one labor line way out of line? And you can go to that person and say, hey, what are you doing differently than I'm not in order to bring my labor back in line? But if you don't know those numbers, you can't ask those questions. And look and see what's happening. And then again, this gives you the determine the next steps to change the story if the story is not good, or to keep to maintain the story. Sometimes we have a good year and we don't even know why, right? So again, it just allows us to do that. Next. Again, the gross margin number is important. The operational margin is important. Again, we talked about margin, profit margin, your return on your assets, return on equity, and return on your sales. There's some ratios that you're looking for. Like I said, we were working with a client the other day, and the bank came up with a ratio I'd never heard of before. It was just crazy. I'm like, all my years of doing this, they just came up with a new one. I'm not sure why, but so again, depending on your banking institution, they might ask you for a different ratio, but again, don't be embarrassed to ask why or what it means. So next slide. This is industry, kind of the stuff we've done over the years. So maintenance, again, you can look at this. If you want this spreadsheet, I can send this to you. Send me an email. But for maintenance, turf, landscape construction, irrigation, snow, property enhancements, and then your totals, they all have different equipment percents, all material different expenses, what the gross profit is, what their net profit should be, and then what their industry benchmark should be. So that's why you need to break this out in divisions, not just have a total company, because so one or two of your divisions could be killing it and the others could be losing you all the money. So if you know that, then you can concentrate those other divisions. Next slide. Financial planning. Next slide. Carrie, thank you so much for doing this. I so appreciate it. Couldn't do this without you. Okay, so financial risk management, really, really important to do. We're going to talk about life insurance, liability insurance, snow insurance, vehicle insurance, and bonding. Next slide. working with your financial institution to get this stuff done. Next slide. Oh, I thought there was more. So Carrie, can you go back to the slide 51? Sorry, I thought there was more here. Um, so the things you need to have within your business are life insurance. So as an owner, you need to have life insurance. The great thing about life insurance for your significant other is that the government allows you to write off life insurance policy, personal life insurance policy as a company expense. Right. So I laugh with my wife a little bit because I sometimes I say to her, I'm like, do you realize that I'm more valuable to Marla dead than I am alive? Because we have a great life insurance policy. So it is one of those things you don't necessarily want to talk about death, but it is one of those things that you can pass on some money to your loved ones or to your significant other to be able to do that. The other thing it allows you to do is if you do have a larger company, that the company is not going to stop because you've passed on, you've got hit by a bus. So it's really, really important to take some life insurance out. If you have a partnership of any kind, the partnership has to have it. It's non-negotiable. Okay. And then the how you write that life insurance policy is that the policy then is payable to the other partner. Okay. So and we've seen this way too many times before. One partner dies for some reason, and then the other partner has to buy out that maybe that significant other doesn't have the money to do that and cash straps the company, right? But if they had a life insurance policy, the life insurance policy would have actually paid the partner out. So I always say the minimum amount you want in life insurance, if you have a partnership, is the possible buyout value of it. Okay, that's the minimum amount you need. But please, please, please have life insurance. I ask this all the time, especially if you haven't updated it lately. Please update it. If your business has grown significantly, if you have way more assets, something should be done. At least if you haven't done it in the last couple of years, please do it. Please, 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 for the sake of your significant others and people in the business, please do it. Liability insurance. Again, most of us have liability insurance. Again, just keep updating it. This grows and you don't necessarily update that type of stuff. Snow insurance is awesome. Again, most of us are overpaying for snow insurance right now. So I know there's an SIR group Carrie's involved in, we're involved in, that's trying to bring down that risk and that dollar figure that you can be part of. So there's an opportunity for you to do that. I think the pendulum has swung. I think the worst has hit. There seems to be more companies coming into the insurance market. But for the last couple of years, there wasn't very many insurance providers even doing it. Not brokers, but bigger companies that were doing it. So you didn't have that much opportunity. The price was the price. We were seeing 20, 30, 40% year over year increases. And typically those increases came like a month before you're starting snow, right? So go to your broker. That's the other thing. Go to your broker and get a spring renewal, not a fall renewal. It's a bit painful, but trust me, it's way better to be able to do that. Vehicle insurance, again, we carry most of the vehicle insurance. Bonding is important if you're doing a lot of big commercial work. Is really important. They're asking you to do that. Again, you talk about ratios. You talk about if you need bonding, they're gonna go through your books because again, they're at risk. They're putting their name on the line that you're gonna be able to do that job. So to be able to do, again, for any of the insurance, get someone who understands the market. If you're a broker, I ended up using my mom and dad's broker who didn't have a business. It was just a residential broker. We loved him, but he just didn't understand business. So we had to find a new broker for insurance. So just ask someone in this chat, ask me. I can give you a good referral to someone that can help you understands the industry. Next one, leadership, corporate citizenship. Next. Learning objectives of this book was understanding the fundamental theories and principles of leadership and how to motivate people, understanding management roles and responsibilities, how to deal with conflict, setting clear realistic goals, how to be effective in communication, how to run effective meetings, and how to do change management. Next. Should have taken that one out. Next. Okay. So what is the role? Okay, did we skip some slides or no? Was that yeah, okay. Sorry. Yeah, right. That slide threw me for a loop. So okay. The role of a manager. So again, majority of us grew up in this industry pretty much just as a technician. We got good at it. We started by, maybe we started in like a wheelbarrow in the back of a truck. Maybe we started by trimming grass, and we've got into a position where we're an owner and we're managing people, and we've never done it before. Maybe we've never really had good training on it. But really, what's the role of a manager is to make sure that we're planning, that we're leading, we're organizing, and we're controlling everything that's going on around us. And that is really important. And it's not just operational. I'd say most of our leaders are really good operational leadership, but they're not very good within the business overall. And again, this is a skill that can be taught. There's tons of resources out there, but it's not, your role as a leader is not just operational. It's not just getting everyone out in the morning and having a job run smoothly. It's way more than that. So it says effective leadership is a managed position, means being good at motivating our employees. And most of us in this industry long enough are jaded by employees, and we just want people to come to work and do their job. But unfortunately, that's not what it means to be a boss anymore. So next slide. The one thing I love about Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this really, again, I saw this. I still remember my first year at Fanshawe when I was in horticultural school, and I'd take this course that I thought was the stupidest course ever. But it talked about this. It talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's really, this is what people need. Every one of us need this. And as an owner, as a leader, it's your responsibility to move people up the diamond, right? Or the pyramid. So the basic thing we need air, water, shelter, sleep, we need clothing, and we need to be able to reproduce. The one thing we see right now is in Canada and all over the world right now, there's a lot of people that aren't hitting this need right now. We live in a small town just outside of London, and there is a lot of people right now that don't have food and shelter, right? And honestly, like 10 years ago, I would say that wasn't a problem. Even 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, that was not a problem here in Ingersoll. But our homeless crisis is at a high right now. So there's a lot of people right now that aren't getting this physiological needs being met right now. And that's just, people need that. They're not going to come to work if they do not have food and shelter. They can't do it. They can't think about coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning and doing that if they don't have that. The next thing is they have safety needs. Do they have personal security? Do they have employment? Do they have resources? Do they have health? Do they have some sort of property? Right? Again, personal security is up to us. That's PPE. Do they come to work with the proper safety boots? Do they come with, shirt? Do they have some employment? Again, we want to offer employment. But if someone loses their shelter, or they can't eat, their employment is pretty much it's not going to work out, right? So eventually going to lose that employment. They need the resources, they need the health, and they're looking for some sort of property to be able to do. So that's their safety. The next one, they want love and belonging. So they want some friendships, they want some intimacy, they want a family, they want a sense of connection. And deep down, I know this is, for most of us men, this is tough with our staff, right? Because this is feelings, and most of us just don't want to do feelings. We just want to get stuff done. So you have to be able to understand them. You need to have, build a friendship with them. Just for our spouses, we need to be intimate with them. We need a family. We want a sense of connection. The next one after that is esteem. They want to have respect. They want to have self-esteem. They want to have some status. They want to have recognition. They want to have strength, and they want to have freedom. The recognition is one of those things. Again, that's why we do shout outs, at work, right? We want to show them respect. We want to build into them. We want to show they're valuable, right? And then the last one is self-actualization, which desire to become the most that one can be, right? So if you can look right now and kind of say to your staff, or put your staff on each one of these, where are your staff? And then how can you move them up? Maybe we have a staff member right now that just have safety. That's all they have covered. So what can you do in order to get them into that love and belonging? And again, that's unfortunately what our role is as a leader, as an owner within a business. Next slide. Leadership traits. Again, there's so many books on this. It's incredible. Practice what you preach. This is just a practical one. I say this all the time to people. Look for a win-win-win in a relationship. Be picky about doing stuff. Keeping it simple is really hard to do. Rewarding the right results, and listening and talking straight. The other one, someone told me the other day, is clarity is kindness. So something like that, where so many of us don't want to have that honest conversation with someone, but we're not being kind to them if we're not. So again, just think of, again, if I could summarize this, treat people the way you want to be treated. If you do that and you start thinking about that, a bunch of this stuff will come to fruition for you. So next slide. Qualities of great leaders: they're they're emotionally stable, um, they're enthusiastic, they're contagious, they're socially bold, they're tough-minded, self-assurance. There's some really good words in there that you can use. Being a great leader right now, a great owner, is really, really tough. Ownership of owning a small business right now is tough. Like, there's so many things going wrong. There's so many things playing against you as an owner right now that are forcing a lot of owners not to be emotional stable. They're having a hard time being enthusiastic. They're having a hard time being socially bold. They're having their toughness and their mindset is wearing on them. So, but again, it's just one of those things we have to do. The other one is leadership of future will exhibit high energy. They're team orientated. They're empathetic. They're charismatic. They're intuitive. I don't know what the other one is. But again, it's just one of those things where you can start to see, take a great leader, whether it's Winston Churchill or Simon Sinek or anyone that you can think of that has a great biography. They have these things, right? Some of these things don't come naturally. So to me, I am not a high energy type of guy. This this is not natural for me to do this tonight, right? I'm high energy. I'm trying to get you pumped up. I'm trying to get you excited. I want you to go tomorrow and just be ready to go. That's not my natural tendency. My natural tendency is to be introverted and to be quiet, right? I don't get in my way to go talk to people, right? But I have to do that because that's my role. That's what I want. I get passionate about helping contractors. But that's not my natural tendency to do that. So I have to work at that. I've learned that. I've learned how to do that. And I've learned that if I do that, it goes a long, long way. Next slide, Carrie. To manage conflict, a leader must ask a series of questions. What's important? Who has the power? What's at stake? What's the time frame? What's the bottom line? Again, that book that I recommended, The Crucial Conversations, it goes through these type of things. So what's important about having this hard conversation? So what's the end goal? Who has the power? A lot of times the owner has the power. But as soon as that power dynamic becomes too offset or too weighted to one side, then the conflict's going to go sideways. What's at stake? Just acknowledging what's at stake. I had to have a hard conversation with someone today about what was at stake. I'm like, listen, if you don't do this soon, your job is at stake, right? You have to make this change. If not, you will not work here. So I was very clear with that person to do that and saying to them, we're here to help you. But if you don't take your advice, you don't take our advice, you don't help us with this, you will not work here anymore. And then even to that, it was like, and you have 30 days to do this, right? You have 30 days to do it. Here's how we're going to help you. This is the time frame. And the bottom line, at the end of 30 days, we booked in our calendar at 30 days to have a review and to review all these things. And that person should know at the end of 30 days what the outcome of that conversation is going to be. None of us like conflict. I don't like conflict. If you heard this the first time, I gave an example of my wife and I. So there's two type of people with conflicts: those who are aggressive and those who flee. I'm the fleer typically, and my wife's the aggressive one. So we had our first house. We had a little kitchen with two entrances and a living room. So literally, she would say to me, "Hey, we need to talk about something," and I'd start walking away from her, and then she would be walking behind me, and it was literally just a circle. I was running, and she was trying to keep up to me. I didn't want to deal with the conflict, and she was trying to resolve it. So it was literally, it must have been hilarious to look at it from the inside of our little apartment, but it is something you need to do. So again, identify, do you like conflict, not like conflict? How do you deal with conflict? We'll help you with that. Next slide. Communication is basic for all human interactions. To be an effective leader, you need to be able to communicate information, convey the meaning. And I don't know what the rest of that says, but it's just really important. Next slide. Active listening. So a skill that I've learned, and this is one, I don't like role playing, but this was a good role playing one I had to do. Most people, when you talk to them, you will notice that a lot of people will start creating a response before you're finished talking. Okay. So I will come to you and be like, listen, I need to talk to you about something. And you can already see the person before you've even said what you need to do, they're already trying to get a response. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to be able to show empathy with that person. You need to make eye contact with that person. You need to avoid outside distractions. So like taking our phone, that is so amazing, turning it upside down or even putting it away so that it's not going to distract you. Don't interrupt the person. Ask a lot of clarifying questions. So I always like the clarifying question is so what I'm hearing you say is this, and that's the paraphrasing as well. And then confront your personal bias. I suck at this. I really, really do. This one's the hardest one. I can do the rest of these really, really well, but I have to really go into when I have these type of hard conversations with my bias there. And a lot of times I leverage my wife for this. I'll be like, hey, I'm going to this conversation. And she'll be like, you need to watch out for this because this is what I've heard you say to me, or this is what I think that you're going to think. So I love this little cartoon. It says, I got the test results back from your ear doctor. You're not hearing impaired, you're listening impaired. So just something there. But again, if you can actively listen to people, especially as an owner, again, most owners are not good at that. They're just good problem solvers. So someone brings us a problem, we're jumping on how to solve it too quickly rather than asking some good questions. So sometimes they don't even want to be solved. That was the thing again with my marriage was like Marla would bring me something and I would be trying to solve it. So a lot of times she'll bring me something right now and she'll be like, I don't want you to solve this. I just want you to listen. So I just know in my head, I'm not trying to problem solve that for Marla. I'm just trying to listen to her. And she doesn't need it solved. She just needs to vent. But I'm trying to solve it because that's what I do well. So next slide. SMART goals are really good. So anytime you set a goal for someone or with someone, it needs to be a SMART goal. So it needs to be specific. It needs to be measurable. It needs to be achievable. It needs to be realistic. It needs to have some sort of timeline. So again, if you're having a hard conversation with someone and you're like, hey, this needs to change, then what are you going to do to change? So be specific about the change. How are we going to measure that change at the end of it? Is it achievable for that person to do that amount of change? Is it realistic? And then when are we going to come back and do it? So anytime you do a goal, set a goal, it could be like your New Year's Eve goals, if they're coming up soon. So, be able to do that is really, really good. Next one. Effective meeting guidelines. Most of us do not know how to run a good meeting. Most people will sit there and say, if I don't have to do another meeting, that's amazing. So please don't allow me to do meetings. Meetings are important if they're done well. So to order to run an effective meeting, to have an effective meeting, what you need to do a bit of planning before, during, and after. Okay. So typically most people just can't walk into a meeting and just be like, good, let's go. And that's it. So do we even need to ask yourself these questions? Do we need a meeting? What is the start time? You need to determine the agenda. You need to determine who needs to attend, and you need to garner support. Most of us invite too many people to meetings. So if you don't think you need to be in the meeting, but someone's invited you, just say, no, I don't think I need to be there. Some of us feel good about being invited to meetings. We need to feel like useful or feel like that we're wanted. But if you don't need to be in that meeting, it's just a waste of time. During the meeting, we need to start and end on time. We need to take charge of our time. We need to ban technology to the meeting. Like, again, take your phone, get away from that. Avoid groupthink. So again, I can always say this is death by committee. Park irrelevant issues. So if you get off track, you always talk about like a squirrel, like, hey, let's not talk about that. Like that's a different topic. Bring that into it. Take notes, confirm your next steps, and all important, someone needs to take notes or take minutes and then do a follow-up on that type of stuff. So if you can do that, your meetings will be better. They'll be more effective. They'll be shorter, and you won't feel like you're dying in meetings all day. So next, the change curve. Again, all of our businesses have changed. So this was a really good model to sit there and say, anytime that you need to change something in the business, if you're looking at implementing technology, for instance, or the biggest thing is like, a couple of years ago, we were changing everything from paper timesheet to digital timesheet, understanding that everyone that you make this change with is going to go along this path. Some of us get there faster than others, but understanding that people are going to do it. They're going to be shocked when they first hear it. They're going to have disbelief. Like, why do we have to do this? Then they're going to be frustrated because maybe the app doesn't work properly or they're not used to how to use it. Then they're going to get depressed. They're going to start being like, this is dumb. I don't want to do this. Then they're going to start to experiment with it. Then they're going to make a decision, and then they're going to start to integrate it. Okay. So again, depending on the type of personality you have or who you're doing with this could go over a month. This could go over a couple days. This could go over a year for some people, depending on what it is. But just understanding that just because you uptook it quickly doesn't mean that everyone else should. And just because some people take longer to do it doesn't mean that you have to give up on them. So again, it's just a good visual for that change curve when you do this type of thing. Next. Feelings about change. Again, same type of thing. The positive, excited, challenging. There's growth opportunities. There's new skill sets to be had. There's new job enrichment. There's some diversity. There's some increase in job security. Some negativity towards feeling about change. It can be frustrating. Definitely fear of unknown. I would say the biggest one there. It'll never work. The feel of failure. There's more work. We hear that all the time. Like you're like, well, for 5 years, 10 years, we've been doing it this way. And then why do you have to do it? Now I just have to do more work, and it's keeping me away from my other work. And then loss of job security for a lot of people, right? If I don't pick this up, then maybe I'm being left behind. So again, just understanding that these feelings are okay, and you kind of need to address them as you're rolling out the type of change within the business. Next, risk law and contract, the most exciting of them all. So risk is a condition in which there is a possible of adverse deviation from desired outcome that is expected or hoped for. Next slide. So risk in itself presents itself in many ways. So it could be a fire, natural disaster, theft, damage to assets, third-party liability. So much of this stuff is not stuff that, as a business owner, you didn't think you'd ever have to deal with. But it's happening right now. Theft is crazy, unbelievable. Again, it's the amount of stuff that's being stolen right now, more than we've ever seen before. And again, third-party liability is happening. So again, stuff that you need to be able to protect yourself against. Next, 4 categories of risk. So there's customer risk, there's personal risk, there's property risk, there's market risk. Customer risk is obviously losing a client. So again, we have clients that are like, hey, we have this big mall. And I'm like, okay, what percent of that income, of your total income, is that client? And they're like, well, they're about 50% of our work. And I'm like, that's way too much risk. You cannot have one portfolio so big. Maybe you do a lot of work for one type of property manager, right? Or one type of property, owner. So you have to diversify your customer risk. If you were to lose this customer today, how would that affect you? Right. So again, it's better to have more irons in the fire than less. And it's nice to have one customer that gives you all that type of work, because that means there's less work for you to sales. But if that percent is too high, then you need to be able to watch out for that. Personal risk is always there. Again, someone getting hurt, a slip and fall, someone slipping in your yard. Again, we are in our industry, personal risk is everywhere, right? Like tonight, I'm sure because you're not here live, they're shoveling. We're asking our staff to walk on icy sections in the middle of the night, not having enough sleep. There's lots of personal risk involved in us for that. Property risk, again, through fire, through theft, through damage, lots of opportunities for to be able to do that. The market risk, we're seeing the economic right now, right? The downturn in the economy for the design build has been amazing. We've been on the upswing of that since COVID, but now we're eventually seeing that downfall. My personal opinion is I think we've hit the bottom of it, but it's not going to be like it was 2 years ago. So we have to be able to figure that out. Again, structure, pricing, market, competitors coming in all the time. Again, you can't figure out why business owners are a bit tired, because there's all these other things to think about. Next slide. How to manage your risk techniques, how to avoid it, how to live with risk, how to transfer the risk. Next one. So customer and public risk. Sorry, Carrie, can you go back one more? I'm going to just talk about this one. So how to avoid it, how to live with risk, and how to transfer it. So there is some things that we can avoid in the risk. Most of it is we have to live with it. Just like I said, like tonight, you're out in the middle of a snowstorm. You have to live with the risk that your staff, your employees might slip and fall tonight and hurt themselves. But that's a risk we have to take, understanding that. And then how can we transfer that risk? One of our clients has a policy They're a big snow contractor. They have a policy for big snow. If they get over X amount of centimeters in a season, because a lot of their contracts are set, they have a policy that allows them to be able to claim if it's X amount of centimeters over their current contract, right? So they're able to share that risk with someone else, and they pay a premium for that. But it just allows them to be like, they understand that, hey, we are way too heavy on all-inclusive contracts here. If we get caught with a really, really heavy winter, we are financially at risk. So they'll actually take a policy out on that. Next slide. So on the product failure, so again, I always look at, for me, the biggest one is like, effervescence in interlock, right? Happens all the time. We see it all the time. Plant material always fails, so you always have to put 10% extra in plant material. It's a living item, you're always going to lose plant material. So most people will put extra dollars towards that type of stuff. On-site injuries include if you have a landscape yard, if people are coming to your contractor's office, stuff like that. The liability one is this for us is, again, in the sewing industry, this is huge, right? So people entering your job site, auto accidents and slip and falls. And I'd say the slip and falls is the number one risk we have in liability right now. And again, there's lots of work going in the background to help contractors litigate that. Next slide. Bad debt. Again, this is big right now. So again, this is where you have to stay on top of your accounts receivable, contract disputes, financial distress of a customer, fraud. We had a customer a couple of years ago do a beautiful backyard for a client in Muskoka, like excellent work. The customer is happy. At the end of the day, the customer is like, I'm only going to pay you X amount. And the contractor's like, well, why? He's like, well, because you know what? If you want the rest, you can fight me for it. And I was like, what? But that person plays by different rules, right? So, so just understanding like, yeah, people don't think like I do, right? Even though the client's happy, all that type of stuff. But the contractor got behind in their draws, right? And then that person saw that as an opportunity to take advantage of the contractor, even though they're happy with the service, they're happy with the outcome. It just, that person was just like that. So you got to be careful of that. And then the fraud we've talked about, just getting your emails, taking EFT, all kinds of fraud going on right now. So just be careful of that. Next slide. 4 C's of credit: character, capital, capacity, conditions. So is your character like, again, this is your credit, do you have a record of good credit? Do you have some good credit card there? Do you have a mortgage? Have you paid your mortgage? Do you show honesty, integrity to your clients? The character has a lot to do when you're starting out with your suppliers. Like, does the supplier, like a lot of suppliers will give you credit when maybe the banks don't, right? So when you want to go to the bank and do you have some capital? Is your balance sheet strong? Do you have cash or assets to do it? Most times, if you're looking for a line of credit, the line of credit is not securable because it's going towards expenses like labor and all that type of stuff. So they're typically, the bank's going to say, hey, we would like you to put your house on the line, right? So there's some sort of security there for that. Capacity, do you have the ability to pay that asset back, right? Again, that's some of those ratios are measuring that capacity. And then current conditions. So right now, when money was cheap, people would come to me all the time like, hey, I'm looking for $100,000. I'd be like, hey, listen, I got a couple personal people that are willing to give out a personal line of credit. It's a higher interest rate, but it's like people are willing to get a better rate for their money, to lend it out personally. All that money's dried up right now. It's really hard to get any money right now because the conditions are, everyone's tight. Everyone's trying to watch their money with the current economic situation, with political situation. So getting money today is much harder than it was a year ago. It will get better, don't get me wrong. But currently, if you're looking for money, it's going to be very hard to get it, if you can get it at all. Not just not paying a higher interest rate, but just getting the access to money. Next. Other debt, personal guarantees that you may have. Again, that's where you're putting your house on the line, getting a letter of credit from your banking institution, and then you can also get credit insurance. I've never heard anyone getting credit insurance, but it is something you can do. And then again, just kind of that. So I love Michael Scott, and like, I declare bankruptcy. Just it's just not that easy to do that. So next slide. What should we be covered? So again, a lot of this stuff is already set in there. You have WSIB for your employees. Again, you have equipment insurance. Yeah, not a lot. Some people, if you have a lot of inventory, you can do that. Most of the inventory we get for contractors is fairly high turnover, so you don't necessarily need that. Most of us do have building land fixtures. You do have liability insurance. Some people do have some business interruption. The vehicle and life insurance. The one thing I think you gotta get really good at right now is currently I'm renting a vehicle. I hit a deer a couple weeks ago, and so of course it's called the insurance company. Yeah, no problem. There's a rental there for you. And the lady at the rental county said something I've never heard of before. I was like, she's like, you, Mr. Harrison, you understand you only have this car for 23 days. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, your policy has a limit on how many days you can have your rental car. I was like, I didn't know that. I've rented on this policy before, but apparently on my last renewal, the insurance policy had put that there's a limit on my 23 days of how long I can have it. Of course, I didn't read the small print. I just, when I got my new policy, I signed it, threw it, got my pink slip, threw the rest in the garbage. But just got to make sure you're reading the small print because of that. A lot of buildings, same type of thing. If you're running a lot of if you're running electrical vehicles right now, like battery operated stuff, I know a couple contractors are doing that, and you need to have an extra policy for that. In that you need to tell your broker that you have that. What types of other coverage? Fire, theft, earthquake, again, not a big deal. Flood. A lot of houses right now can't get flood insurance. We have friends that have a place in Florida, and you're not getting hurricane insurance right now if you don't already have it on a policy. So sewer backup and loss of income. So again, find a good broker that understands your business is really important. Next slide. So I threw this one in. Hopefully you're still with me. So we'll keep going. Insurance claim management. So slip and falls. People will tell me all the time, I got to slip and fall. Don't ignore it. You got to keep great records. Don't be passive about it. Stand your ground. Understanding your insurance broker, your insurance company, you have a lot of things going. I remember the second or third slip and fall claim I went to with my insurance broker. I was so surprised that our lawyer and the opposing lawyer were opening up the file for the very first time in front of me. And I was so angry. I said to my lawyer, I'm like, why have you not reviewed this file? He's like, well, because I have 80 files on the go right now that I didn't have time to review it. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. But I was being very passive. I was like, I'm going into this thinking my lawyer has my best interest at heart. So I'm like, there's never again I'm going to do this. I want to know when I have a slip and fall, where's it at? Calling the insurance company, give me an update. And we've even got times where we got a slip and fall, and then I call and the company's like, oh, we settled it. I'm like, when? Like 6 months ago. I'm like, no, I don't want you to settle that. I want you to fight it. I have all the documentation. I think I've done my due diligence. So don't ignore it. You have to keep great records. And I said, don't be passive about it. You need to be aggressive. This is your business. Don't assume they have your best interest at heart. And it's not that they don't, but they just have a lot of stuff on their go. And then you need to stand your ground. You can fight back when it comes to that type of stuff. So next slide. When to hire a lawyer on a contract, for sure. Again, Landscape Ontario has a lawyer you can get access to, take advantage of that. So if you're signing 12-month maintenance contracts, again, Landscape, they have an amazing template. If you can get the clients to sign that, that's great. Sometimes you can't. And then there's this whole harmless clause you can talk about. I'm not going to talk about that, but go to the Snow and Ice Insurance group. They'll help you with that. Any business structure, if you're looking at a partnership, yes, please do it. Sole proprietor, maybe not. Basic incorporation papers you do need. Anytime you're being sued, your wife, you killed your wife and her friend. Obviously, good time to get a lawyer. And then anytime you're being accused of a crime, any advice you're looking for. The advice one right now is big time. We're having lots of HR issues right now. We had one the other day where we did a criminal record check on someone, and it came back. This was like, oh my goodness, we shouldn't have hired this person. So we ended up calling the lawyer, and it was an employment lawyer, but just like, what do we do here? How do we get out of this situation? What can we do? Because it was just over our head, right? Something we had never seen before. So again, they're there for you. Yes, it's an investment, but they're going to save you a whackload of money on the back end. Next slide. Fee agreements with a lawyer so you can get fixed. You need a set of corporation papers. It's flat rate. It's pretty basic. Again, you need a mortgage, typically flat rate. It's fixed. Again, most of the stuff is that hourly rate. Again, if you're looking for a quick call, a lot of lawyers would be like, hey, listen, I just charge by the hour for this. Pretty easy. Again, you might be scared off by the hourly rate, but trust me, it's probably worth it. A retainer, if you're looking for a long-term relationship with a lawyer, maybe you're doing a lot of commercial work or you need that one, maybe keeping a retainer, keeping a lawyer on retainer is important. I always fear when a contractor has a lawyer on retainer. I'm like, use a lawyer that often that you need that, and then have a lawyer for contingency as well. So again, there's all kinds of stuff, but again, find someone. Rob Kearney, I think, is Landscape Ontario's lawyer again. But again, ask someone who knows contractor law. Really, really important. Don't use a family lawyer for this type of thing, but find the right resource. Next slide. And that's it. So I'm glad we got through that. Again, if you've been with us the whole time, I thank you so much for sticking it out. Again, if I'm so sorry that we weren't able to do this in person tonight. Again, I'm so thankful that the Landscape Ontario Waterloo chapter board members gave me the opportunity to do this exercise with you and to spend the time with you. I've learned tons and I've enjoyed getting to know you as a chapter and members. And thank you to Carrie for everything that she's done in the background, for all the technology she's helped us with recording and everything like that. For those of you I've not met, please reach out to me. My information's here. I'm happy to give you advice. We have a podcast. We do some peer groups, business coaching, all that type of stuff. But this is a wonderful industry to be part of. Please reach out to someone. Again, this chapter is amazing. Come out to the chapter meetings and meet someone new and introduce yourself and give some ideas. But again, I just want to thank you so much for having me. And again, if you have any questions based on this slide presentation, I'm happy to go through it with you. And again, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. And we hope to see you at some sort of industry event coming up.